Campaigners have criticised Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner's employment rights bill, calling it a banter ban. Part of the proposed legislation would compel employers, for example pub landlords, to protect staff from overhearing opinions or jokes from third parties or customers that they may not particularly like. Labour insists the bill will not affect anyone's right to lawful free speech, but the Free Speech Union's director, Toby Young, has tabled a motion in the Lords blocking this and has led an online campaign against it. And I'm delighted to say that Toby Young joins me now. Welcome to the show. Thank you. So tell us a bit more about this proposed banter ban. It's meant to be targeting verbal harassment, yes?
Yes, it's an amendment to the Equality Act that is going to be made by the Employment Rights Bill, which will make employers liable for the harassment of their employees by third parties. Now, they're already liable for third-party sexual harassment, so we're not talking about that. We're talking about, as you say, verbal harassment. And the Employment Tribunal has defined harassment over the years. I mean, it's been an evolving bit of jurisprudence, but harassment now includes overheard conversation. So someone successfully sued their employer in the Employment Tribunal for not protecting them, not taking all reasonable steps to prevent them overhearing a conversation they found offensive by virtue of their protected characteristics. So within British law, harassment includes overhearing things. So if we extend employers' liability to third-party harassment, that means they'll have to take all reasonable steps to stop their employees overhearing conversations, remarks, expostulations that they might find offensive or upsetting by virtue of their protected characteristics.
But I hear offensive things in the pub all the time, you know. I mean, I can't go running off to the police about it.
You have to be an employee in order to sue the publican for not taking sufficient steps to protect you from being offended or upset in this way.
But what kind of steps could they possibly take? I mean, they can't seriously be expected to police what their customers speak about in their pub, can they?
Well, I mean, there is a kind of reasonableness constraint on what you can sue your employer for not protecting you from in the Employment Tribunal. But if you look at employment tribunals and the cases they've, heard and the awards they've granted, I mean, that constraint doesn't seem to be in operation.
So let's give you a specific example. So if I were working in a pub and I had a real problem with gender-critical views and I heard a couple of women expressing the view that people can't change sex, what would I do then?
If you were an employee, if you were a pink-haired they-them working at
that's
the
who
pub,
I am in this scenario.
OK, yeah, easy to imagine.
Yes.
And you overheard, or you even saw, a gender-critical customer wearing a woman equals adult human female T-shirt.
Yes.
I think you could legitimately complain to the publican that he hadn't taken sufficient steps to protect you from being harassed in this way, having to see this deeply offensive T-shirt, which you find upsetting and offensive by virtue of your protected characteristic, your transgender identity. Now, there'd be a kind of defence that the publican, if he was well-versed in equality law, could make. He could say, but hang on, having a GC belief and expressing that belief is also protected under the Equality Act. But to expect publicans to navigate this incredibly complex area of equality law, whilst, desperately trying to kind of survive, given the rise in national insurance contributions, the rise in alcohol duty. I mean, according to the Campaign for Real Ale, pubs are going bust at the rate of 37 a week. So to impose this huge additional burden on them, all this red tape, to say you now have to protect your employees from overhearing conversations from customers who might well have had a few beers. I mean, it's just going to be the end of the British pub as we know it.
I mean, Labour would say that they're not trying to criminalise free speech or to crack down on free speech, but we know, don't we, that activists do weaponise laws of this kind to precisely these ends. So are Labour perhaps going to introduce some kind of modification to the bill to ensure that overheard speech is not covered, perhaps?
Well, I proposed several amendments in the House of Lords, and one of them was, could we exclude indirect harassment? So it can't include overheard conversations.
Yes.
You're just going to have to grin and bear it.
So that would solve it.
That would solve it, but that got pretty short shrift from the government benches. They essentially say whenever you try and modify this absurd, overreaching piece of legislation, they say, don't you care about people being harassed? harassed? Don't you care about people being racially abused? Don't you care about misogynistic speech, about barmaids having their bottoms pinched in buns? It's as though it's just binary. Either you protect vulnerable people from nasty, predatory, white working class men who've had too many lagers,
yes,
or you're a free speech absolutist and anything goes. So there's no middle ground as far as they're concerned.
So that just seems to be an ideology that is baked into the DNA of Labour at this point, that they don't trust words and they don't trust being offended. But isn't part of life that you're going to encounter offensive things from time to time?
Well, I had one conversation, Andrew, with the government minister whose job it is in the Lords to defend the banter ban. I said, what about in a football stadium? You know, if a partially sighted steward overhears a fan shouting at a referee or a linesman, "Are you blind?" And by the way, at QPR, that happens roughly once every 30 seconds. The partially sighted steward could sue the club for allowing someone to say that, which he finds deeply offensive by virtue of his protected characteristic, his partial sightedness. Not only could he sue, any other member of the club could sue on his behalf. You don't even have to have the protected characteristic to sue your employer for not taking all reasonable steps to protect employees who do have it. I mean, it's extraordinary. It'll be an absolute free-for-all for the oversensitive, the snowflakes on staff in football grounds. And I said this to the minister, and she said, well, at Brighton, they already have... I'm a fan of Brighton and Hove, of course. Yeah. And we have lots of rules about tragedy chanting, and you can't shout Chelsea rent boys, and I think that's a good thing. I was like, oh, so you think that fans ought to be thrown out, do you, if they say, "Are you blind?" to a linesman? And she didn't really answer, but I think that is her view. Okay, she does think that people shouldn't be saying that kind of thing in football stadiums. Wouldn't say it at Brighton and Hove. Well, I bet they do, actually. But, yeah.
There's a lot of things that don't go on in Brighton, but it's sort of an enclave that isn't part of the real world. What do we do, though, about the issue of performers in clubs? I mean, I speak as a comedian. Yeah. You know, a lot of fringe comedy venues are pubs. Yeah. And we've had at the Edinburgh Fringe a lot of staff members complaining about material that they've heard in shows that people have paid to see. If it happens up there, then why wouldn't it happen here?
It's going to massively increase the weaponry of oversensitive or woke activists on staff at comedy clubs or in entertainment venues. Yes. You know, with Jerry Sadowitz, they were able to say, if you don't know platform him, we'll walk out. We won't work tomorrow. And we'll tell our friends to boycott the venue. Once the banter ban is in place, they'll be able to not only threaten that, but to also threaten to take their employers, the owners of the venue, to the employment tribunal if they allow someone like Jerry Sadowitz to perform. So it's going to have an absolutely devastating impact on the comedy industry.
OK, well, what can people do, Toby, to push back against this? Can they follow Free Speech Union? I mean, what's the best steps?
Well, they could certainly join the Free Speech Union, www.freespeechunion.org/join. It's cheap as chips. It's only £60 a year, only 30 if you're a student, you're on benefits, OAP, etc. But we've got a gizmo on the site which anyone can use, don't have to be a member. We talk about the impact of the banter ban on pubs, so write to a peer to save our beer. Yeah. That's a campaign, and I'm trying to get people to write to peers to try and persuade them to support my amendments to at least dilute the banter ban a little bit. Campaign, you can write to your MP off your own bat and tell them you think this is a crazy idea. There are various measures you can take, but unfortunately, even though this government is in terrible trouble, even though Keir Starmer's approval rating is, in the toilet, and even though he makes a new U-turn every bloody hour, nevertheless, awful bills like the Employment Rights Bill, which are going to have such a negative impact on our economy, not just on pubs, are sailing through Parliament. They're using their massive majority to railroad it through. I don't know what we can do. All we can do is not vote for them again, Andrew.
Well, very good advice, I would say. Toby Young, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So a government spokesperson has said the Employment Rights Bill will not affect anyone's right to lawful free speech, with this government stands firmly behind. Upsetting remarks do not fall within the definition of harassment. We are strengthening workplace protections to tackle harassment and protect employees from intimidating and hostile abuse, as well as sexual harassment. Make of that what you will.